Hello, everybody. Loss of a family member. For one, sorry for the long read. I feel super conflicted about posting this because I feel that it makes my husband and I sound like assholes, but just need to vent, get advice, something. Anyways, 3 weeks ago, my FIL suddenly passed away in his sleep at the age of 69. My husband and I have lived out in Tennessee for the last 5 years, while his parents and sister live out in Colorado still. It was tragic, unexpected, and there were no signs of complications previously, so it was a shock for everyone. My ML is the one that called my husband and told the news. So we were all grieving the loss of my file, while also figuring out how we will get to Colorado to help ML and SIL emotionally through this. Now for some context. My ML has always been persistent, pushy, manipulative, and controlling, hidden behind a veil of kindness and generosity. See my previous post from years ago talking about how she is. She is very religious and is constantly preaching to anyone she comes into contact with. Her daughter, my SIL age 35, recently got a divorce earlier this year, and also through that time got a DUI. I don't agree with her actions as far as the drinking and driving goes, but my mill is very harsh about it. More on that later. My FIL ran a thriving business for the last 30 years, and that was what he always wanted to be involved in, literally up till the day he died. That business was his heart and soul, and it also allowed for MIL can never have to work. My SIL, let's call her A, worked very closely with her dad for the last 12 years as administrative assistant and handled payroll and such. My husband even worked there as a mechanic for the first 7 years of our marriage. Okay, so the day before we fly out to Colorado, my Mile calls and we're all feeling emotional still and being compassionate towards Mile because she just lost her husband. Well, as soon as she gets on the phone, she starts complaining about Sil and how they wanted to go to lunch after looking through pics of FIL. She said that A wanted Mile to drive because they were going to an Italian restaurant, and A wanted to get a glass of wine. Apparently, Mile chose that moment to call her out and say she was an alcoholic and she would be lying drunk in a ditch somewhere if she didn't get her act together. So naturally, A gets annoyed and decides she's had enough for the day and goes home. Mile took it as proof that she's an alcoholic because why would someone get that upset and leave if it wasn't true? There's no way it could be due to the fact her dad just died and she wanted to have a glass of wine to cope with it in that moment, right? During the phone call, she also was being conflicted about where the after-funeral reception would be held. SIL used to work as a server at a fancy golf course and offered to get a reservation set up there in the dining area for an extremely discounted rate. Food would be served, and the atmosphere would have been cozy for everyone to share their stories and love for FIL. Well, my Mile was conflicted having it there because there would be a bar on site, and she didn't want anyone to be able to access it and didn't want A to be the one in charge of it. So fast forward to us being in Colorado. We arrive and Mile is same as she always is. I'm thinking she was still in a state of shock and denial because she was kinda acting like nothing even happened. The SIL found his will that they literally had created 2024 and everything is 100% going towards MIL. The house, vehicles, the business, everything. Now, I don't mean to sound harsh, but Mill has not had a job in over 40 years and does not understand how life works. Phil took care of everything. Mill didn't even know what day trash day was, and they've lived in their house for 20 years. She didn't even know what Phil's wishes were for his body, had to find that out from Phil's sister all the way in Texas. Her day consists of starting her day in whatever way she pleases, preaching to people, walking the dog, and maybe making some meals for breakfast and dinner. She has lived in a fantasy world ever since I've known her. So, needless to say, DH and SIL were shocked to see that the business was put in Mill's name. She only ever went to the business to pull DH or SIL out for lunch, where she would usually just tell them what they need to work on to be better Christians, etc. She has no idea what the business operations consist of, how many employees there are, if it's profitable, etc. Marcel was working at the business on the day her father died, not even knowing the reason he hadn't come into work yet. She is very involved with the operations and has poured herself into that company, so the thought of the business ending up essentially in a toddler's hands has been stressful, to say the least. Mill and Syl's relationship has been strained ever since she was young. Mill is constantly trying to force her beliefs on her and calling her out all the time for things she can fix. She's called her overweight, an alcoholic, too depressed, a bad daughter, etc. So naturally, Syl keeps her distance from her as much as possible. Well, now that Phil is gone, there is necessary family business that needs to be taken care of, and Mill is being stubborn and not trusting anything that A tries to help her with. When they took Phil's body to the funeral home, Mill told them that she doesn't care what happens to his body because that is no longer her husband. Syl had to set up the cremation and agreed to pick up his ashes when they were ready. Mill wants nothing to do with the ashes. She says they are useless to her. Meanwhile, the whole time she's fighting DH and I on everything. We were trying to help set up a place to hold the reception. We suggest the church since it would be free, and that's where everything will be held anyways. And she keeps coming up with reasons why it wouldn't work, yet she doesn't want to do it anywhere else. And look, I completely understand. If it were me, nowhere would be good enough either. But throughout the week, she kept fighting us on everything. Now, mind you, we only had a week to get everything set up for the memorial service. We got the service program set up and the obituary written out, and she had something to complain about with that. We literally had it completed, and then she tells us that she was going to have someone else do it. She kept wanting to get involved and take over the planning for everything, but then never made any actions towards it. We had to be the ones to order flowers for the stage and tables, buy the tablecloths, order the memory book, set up the picture slideshow, create and print the programs. Even though it was painful for us, we did all of it because we figured she would be too distraught to do anything. But everything we did was met with pushback. It was extremely frustrating. While we were there for lodging, we had to stay in the same house that Phil passed away in, literally in the very next room to theirs. Every morning, we would be bombarded with Mill asking a million questions. I'm talking as soon as I opened the bedroom door, we would be met with a conversation. DH and I are used to our own space and slow, quiet mornings with our coffee, so immediately having to perform for someone as soon as we woke up was already frustrating. DH was having nightmares about finding his dad dead in the house, so we decided to stay at SIL's apartment for the rest of the week. Mill wasn't left alone either. She had a good friend staying with her at the house. But every single night, Mill would pester and blow up our phones, asking where we were staying the night at, if she needed to come pick us up, even though we had a vehicle we were using, etc. She absolutely hated the thought that we were staying at SIL's instead of with her. I totally get that she probably wanted us around more, but it felt like we were being toddlers. Towards the end of the week, extended family flew out for the service, family we hadn't seen in 9 years, and she couldn't handle us having private conversations with them alone. She had to be around for every single conversation and interrupt to get attention back on her. We wanted to plan a family dinner, and every restaurant that we came up with, she had a problem with. One of the days we were there, she received a bunch of sympathy cards in the mail. She asked if DH wanted to read them, and he said not at that moment, but he would read them privately later on. She then immediately turned to her friend and had her read the cards out loud in front of us, even though we just told her we didn't want to read them at that time. I don't know. I feel like we're being too harsh because of the circumstances, but also Mill has always been this way, and I guess we were thinking she would be so emotionally torn up that she would be focused on uniting the family instead of being hateful towards SIL and not trusting any of us to help her. She only got tearful when other people were around expressing sympathy. She never cried through his memorial service. And I know people handle grief in different ways, but it didn't really feel like she was even upset that Phil was gone. I am frustrated about all of this, not even for my sake, but for my husband. He is torn emotionally between being sad he lost his father so unexpectedly to being angry at his mom for causing more division. We live in Tennessee and have made ourselves a quaint little life out here. Like this year, we literally just got to where we wanted to be financially, friendship-wise, and more. SIL is still out in Colorado handling the business, which is what she would like to continue to do, way too accessible for Mill to get to and cause issues with. So I know DH is worried about his sister and hoping that she won't go insane, being the one having to deal with their mom just popping in unexpectedly all the time. SIL is still working the business and keeping everyone happy and getting the jobs done, but all that could change in an instant with Mill holding the reins to it. It feels like every other day we get a phone call from SIL about how Mill is making some weird decision. We are all fully aware that everything belongs to Mill, and she can rightfully do what she wants with it. But at the same time, it's scary to think she has so much control over so much and doesn't know what to do with it. Obviously, if we had the choice, we would rather have Phil be here than be concerned about his material possessions. But it's hard to think the business, something he spent majority of his life building, would be left to ruin at the hands of someone that has no clue what they're doing. I know it's also a mindfuck for DH and SIL because they hoped they would receive some sort of inheritance, and the fact they aren't listed on the will is hard to believe. They both had a pretty good relationship with Phil, so it's been hard for them to understand why everything would be left to only their mom. This family has always been weirdly dysfunctional, but man, I never thought it could get worse than it was. Thanks for hearing me out. Sorry if everything wasn't very coherent or well written. There's so many more layers to this too, but I would have to write a book for that.